Hello, everybody, and welcome to our October 2025 astrology forecast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by our brilliant faculty member, Stevie Lowe. So, thank you so much for coming back on the show. And how are you doing today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me back, Kyle. It's good to see you.
I'm excited to see you. We've not been together for a while, so I'm excited for this one today. Okay, so before we get into the details of each week, Stevie, what are your thoughts as October as an overview? What are your thoughts for this month?
Yeah, this month, I think as an overview, it's going with this kind of theme, two steps forward, one step back. And we'll talk more about those retrograde planets going forward, but we'll see a lot of interplanet movement and we'll see some regression, some going forward. We kind of are coming out of the new world back into the old world, but we can't come here without having have been in the new world. So it's still forward, but it's also may feel backwards a little bit.
That's a wonderful point because we made this point last month that the personal planets, they're kind of jutting along. We've got this month, we've got some dignity coming. Right now, we've got Mars in Scorpio. We're going to have Venus entering a home sign. So I think on a personal level, there's some room for progress and for some movement. But as you say, with this collective picture, there's almost a collective nervousness around the world. And I don't know if everybody else feels that, but we're not quite sure as a species where we're going right now. And as you said, it's dipping our toes into the new world, but kind of pulling back with some of these retrograde motions. So collectively, I still think we've got this sense of nervousness, and we're not quite sure collectively as humanity where we're going right now. So it's quite a topsy-turvy world we're in
Mhm.
right now. Okay,
Absolutely.
Stevie, into our first week of October, which is very short. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so October is one of the more chill weeks. The first week, you have your Mercury square Jupiter. So, Mercury in Libra, the planet of relationships, dual ideas, squaring Jupiter and Cancer, exalted Jupiter. So, you might rub up against some ethics with people in your family. There might be some family drama, maybe small community drama and interpersonal dynamics, some kind of debate vibes. Jupiter is exalted there, so on one hand, we can look at it with the eyes that it can dig its heels in and have a very high expectation. But we can also see and lean into the fact that Jupiter is a moderate planet. So it can be also, really taking that time to think about what you say before you say it. That's going to be hard in these cardinal signs, but that's the advice.
Wonderful. I think the positive end of this Mercury square Jupiter is I would certainly say keep a pen and paper handy nearby for any big bold ideas that you might have because the advantage here unlike previous months is that with these ideas you're able to take action pretty much immediately straight away. We have Mars in its domicile direct. We're waxing with the moon, so there's plenty of energy in the skies to whatever big bold ideas you have to put a plan in action. But for me, I would go ahead and do it straight away because we've got these personal planets moving ahead. And so if you do have these great ideas, I would say push through with your plans. But on the shadow side of this is that you might bite off more than you can chew. Some of the issues or the shadow side with this is that this might be a week where we say too much or we give away too much information, like you're saying, Steve, with debates. We might just say something to our partners or friends or co-workers that we should have reined in because that's going to become more apparent in the following week as Mercury enters into Scorpio. So we might regret later on what we said in the earlier week, especially if we over exaggerate in the first week of October. Now, this might actually tie into some conversations we have with our relationships because on the third, we have not only Venus in her fall, but she's going to be conjunct the South Node. So there might be some issues in terms of relationships. So just be mindful of what you say to each other.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you can kind of see that echoed in with the Mercury opposite Chiron again, with the Aries Libra opposition of self versus other. Just be a little careful with it. But I like your idea there, Cal, about really, if you have a big idea, also jump off. This is a great jumping off point, and Mercury is going to be very close to the star Spica, which is really fortunate. So it's a time for really bold, brilliant ideas.
That's a wonderful point. Now, switching here to more of a mundane sense, we could maybe in this week expect some big news. So I'd watch out. It's never always on the exact date, but a day or two before or after, we might be hearing some, bold news. And I think, again, with this Venus in fall conjunct the South Node, I can't imagine this being a great time in the financial markets. And I think with these tariffs starting to kick in, especially here in the United States, I mean, what is it now, Stevie? Like $1 million for a bag of coffee. So we might be starting to feel some of these effects of these tariffs. And this is maybe on a global stage where maybe some of us are starting to rein in our spending because, of course, with these global issues that we're having. So that's more of a mundane sense, I think,
Mhm.
in the first week. Okay, Stevie, into week two. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so week two is a busy week. We definitely have that Mercury Scorpio, and Mercury is going to be buzzing through in three different signs for the whole month, spending the majority of time in Scorpio. And this kind of points to exactly what Cal said. Week two, Mercury is already in Scorpio. And this is kind of a great because if you did use that jumping off point, this is a time where you can really commit to the idea and go super, super deep with it. But that said, that is going to bring up, possibly more difficult things could surface. When you go very deep, things tend to rise, things tend to surface. So Mercury in a Mars sign is also could be very cutting with its words, or very pointed. And you're having the full moon in Aries, also a Mars sign. At this point, we have Mars domicile. So the Mars stuff in Mars signs is going to be, I mean, we've had so much Mars stuff recently with Mars struggling, so I'm kind of scared what happens when Mars is not struggling. It's like, uh-oh. A lot, I think the intensity is definitely gonna be present in everyone's very single-minded, very focused. The game is on.
I think that's right. The game is on. And I think for week two, as we mentioned in week one, if yourself or other people were over exaggerating or trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, once we get this Mercury into the fixed water, it's not a Mercury that messes around. It's one of the best Mercuries I find for investigational journalism. So if anyone was trying to exaggerate or pull the wool over people's eyes, this is a really is a Mercury that's going to find the facts, and this is going to be reinforced by the Mercury square to Pluto that's going to add that depth and that extra intensity. So again, be careful of what maybe you talked about in the first week because it might come back to bite you in the arse as we get into the second week. Now, on a collective sense, I've got a feeling for this week that we might hear something about the Epstein files. I believe they've just elected somebody now that they can push a vote in Congress to release the files. Now, I don't know if this will happen around this time, and it might not have anything to do with that, but I just can't help but think about this Mercury in fixed water in Scorpio, square Pluto, and unearthing, the underworld and things of this nature. But this might manifest in many different ways. It might be other areas we're not aware of that just news comes out in the collective that just is unearthed from somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, and Cal, you're pointing to something that we're going to see later in the month as well when Mercury and Mars each trine Jupiter. And the Me Too stuff really happened with Jupiter and Scorpio. So I really think that trine to Jupiter will also give this gush of release and this visibility and upliftment of this information. That's very true. Yeah, and I do just with the way things have been, we've seen a lot of stuff with Mercury entering Scorpio here. A lot of people are walking into October with a sense of what sh where is it safe to say things? Where am I safe to talk? So I think people are walking into October with Mercury and entering Scorpio, especially squaring Pluto, reimagining who they talk to, how they talk online, how who they share their secrets with, and all kinds of personal assessments. We might see that play out more on the mundane scale as well.
Those are such wonderful points, and especially as we get further into the month. But I think if we can take this as a positive, this might be a great week to have serious conversations. We were talking about the first week, there might be a lot to do with our interpersonal relationships. But if you need to sit down with a spouse or a partner or a business partner, this might be a great week to hash out any issues you might be having, to have a really serious conversation. And I think it might be helped by the Venus sextile to the Jupiter.
Mhm.
And it might just help ease some of those tensions if there are any. And so this might be a good week to really sit down with someone and have a serious conversation. Now, again, on the mundane level, once we get that Venus, yes, it makes a sextile to the Jupiter, but we've got now this Venus still in its fall in the opposition to Saturn. The mixed reception helps maybe a little bit, but I think on the mundane level, I think we've still got this theme of issues in the financial markets, or again these tariffs kicking in, and a lot of people, especially the average citizen, in the United States or even in Europe. I mean, we've seen this cost of living get out of control everywhere, and I just
Mhm.
don't see October being a month where it really eases up a lot. Maybe when Venus goes into a home sign, possibly, but really for the average citizens like us, I don't know about you, Stevie, but my grocery bill is gone through the roof, and I think this is going to be the continued theme for this month.
Yeah, and we're hearing it from the farmers too. A lot of farmers are in a lot of trouble, and Saturn in a lot of ancient texts was ruling agriculture. So we can see this kind of again, Saturn was, from Aries to back to Pisces, and now getting this opposition from Venus. It doesn't it's it's Saturn's exalted lord in Pisces, but Venus is also not in a great place. So it's sort of like I see you, but I can't really help you. And I think we might be hearing a lot of these stories, but we don't really know how to solve the problems at this point.
Such a wonderful point, and it might just be the case that we have to either collectively or on a personalized, like rein in. I've got this feeling for Venus opposite Saturn. It's like holding in the purse strings or just tightening up our belt. So if we have to sit down with that Mercury in Scorpio, it might help because we can get really into the depths of maybe our budgets and really see where we need to make some cuts if we need to, things of that nature. But I've just got this general sense that a lot of us are going to have to be reining in our spending, I think, at this moment in time.
Hmm.
Okay, into week three. Stevie, your thoughts?
Another really busy week. This one's really busy. We're all very excited for Venus to enter Libra. Yeah, I think Venus it doesn't really do too bad in Virgo in my personal opinion, but I think there is a level of ease and sociability that is going to be a little bit of like social bomb coming up. I think for some reason I'm getting like, the seasonal change really starting to look pretty and things around you, you might just feel a little eased up there. And Venus is going to be in a square to Jupiter by sign at this point. And so we're going to see that opening, the square starting to open up. And whenever the moon is going to be transiting through different signs that aspects both of them, we will feel a little bit of benefic enclosure from time to time. So I'm really looking forward to Venus in domicile. All the Venus ruled people, I think we're gonna enjoy that time. But we have the initial opposition to Neptune, so it's a little bit like tainted love, it's like it's tainted love. It's like just don't judge Venus Libra by its first aspect this time around.
Wonderful point, Stephen. I want to actually go back to your point talking about that Venus in Virgo. So even in this channel, we talk a lot about dignities. We're not shit talking. If you've got Venus in Virgo, like it's one of my favorite placements, especially some of my favorite hairdressers and barbers have had Venus in Virgo. And some of the people who do contractual work for me, like whether they're building cabinets, things of that nature, beautifully ornate. So again, just because we're saying it in fall doesn't mean good or bad. It's just the
Mhm.
general condition we're talking about Venus. So I'm glad you brought that point up. Stevie. But I agree with you. I'm a Libra rising, so I'm very much looking forward to this Venus getting into Libra. And like you said, it has this, it's an air sign. It has this social quality. So maybe the aesthetics of fall, we're going to see those leaves change. A lot of these beautified areas, which is going to be really nice. And honestly, I think week 3 for me is probably my favorite week out of the month of October. Now, there's some caveats here because, as you mentioned, that Venus is zipping along, but it makes it that opposition to Neptune. Now, this can manifest in many different ways, but I would say, if you're going on a Tinder date, just be mindful on this day. Just be mindful of, say, rose-tinted glasses. We have this beautiful Venus, but with the opposition to Neptune, things might not all be what they seem. But that's not just for new relationships. That could be in our own interpersonal relationships. So just watching out for that Neptune quality. But on the other hand, this might be a beautiful day for if you're artistically inclined, maybe to pick up a paintbrush or do something, Neptunian in that sense to
Hmm.
work with that
Hmm.
Venus. And I think this Pluto adds a little bit of intensity to this week, even though I've been talking about this being one of my favorite weeks, because as we know, Stevie, any planet that stations to go direct or retrograde tends to be one of the loudest planets in the sky. And with Pluto, it's not rainbows and butterflies. We know with Pluto, we have the themes, or we can have the themes of, destruction, sometimes violence of that nature if there's any connection with Mars. But really, it's not a happy-go-lucky planet. I'm hoping we don't see any more uptick in worldwide violence or destruction. I hope that's not the case, and I hope the collectively we can deal with this energy a little bit better. But I have this worry about this on a mundane sense, this continued authoritarianism we're starting
Hmm.
to see around the globe, and especially, even here in the United States, about putting troops into large cities and things of this nature, and power plays and things of this nature. So I do worry about the times we're living in. And I know we've
Hmm.
mentioned this in other episodes before, but we look back historically with Pluto and Aquarius, with the French American revolutions, with the last time Uranus was in Gemini was from 1941, I think, to 1949. And the last time, even though Neptune is dipping back into Pisces this month, which we'll talk about, last time Neptune was in Aries was around the American Civil War. So I do worry about some of these outer planet connections. And of course, history doesn't always repeat, but it can often rhyme. So I
Well,
do want to caution this area. Sorry,
yeah.
Stevie, go ahead.
And no, that those are great points. And we're already seeing stuff like that happen with, now we have an East Coast, West Coast. I'm forgetting the name of it, but they're medical kind of alliances, so that public safety alliances. And so there's like they have the same group name, but one is for the East Coast, one is for the West Coast, and they're basically all of the states who are still going to be putting out public safety recommendations and things like that, and tracking wastewater and things like that, and all of the outers getting positive aspects does not make me feel any better. I totally am with you. We see like the trines happening, and you're like, the trine is no better than the opposition. I mean, it might be easier, but it's exactly what you're saying. It's just empowering these planets, which have historically are really violent precursors to to national dismay. And Saturn through Pluto is going to be retrograde until October 13th, and then you have the outer planet that is going to be the loudest. It's the one that's direct now. So when we say two steps back, one step forward, now Pluto is going forward, but we're like, do we really want you to go forward? I mean, I guess we do so we can deal with it, but at the same time, do we want you to be the slowest moving planet, and now the only direct planet out of all of these really slow moving planets? So I'm with you. I think we're going to see a lot of authoritarianism. Obviously we're seeing that 1,200 people have been disappeared in Florida, migrants, and Venus trining all of this looks like more like lip service, to be honest, rather than some kind of real commitment to help people. So, Venus is in domicile, but you can't just say that a planet in domicile is ethically going to do good. So we have to just watch out for that lip service, especially with that first taste that Venus is going to have with Neptune. It's like, ooh, I'm going to grab the lie, and then I'm going to tell it to Pluto and Uranus, and that's a possibility.
I really love those points, and I really like the point you made before about the nature of aspects because I think it's something that's not discussed often enough. That even though we might be having trines or nice connect, or in quotes, nice, easier aspects with these outer planet configurations, like you said, it doesn't necessarily mean like a square or an opposition, doesn't mean good or bad, because you might have an ease of these powers, but if those powers are being used collectively in our eyes or through our opinions the wrong direction, like authoritarianism, that's not good if there's an ease of those kind of energies able to do that without many checks and balances. So I
Mhm.
really like that they make that point of, it's like your own natal chart. Just because you have a bunch of squares and oppositions doesn't mean good or bad. Often you find some of the most successful people in the world have a lot of squares and oppositions because you need the energy to create that, that diamond, that tension to
Mhm.
build. And just because somebody has a whole bunch of trines and sextiles, I mean, they might not get off the couch because life is so, they may not have the tension to do that. So I really like that point you made about the
Mhm.
collective and the aspects and how that doesn't always mean that's just going to be a nice, easy time. But I think I love your point about Venus. So yeah, even though we're domiciled here, I think on a more personal level, if I'm going to take a lighter note on this is my Libra rising. I think this might be nice time for, trying something new with your partner. Venus trying Uranus, it's fairly brief, but this might be a nice day or two to try something different. Go
Mhm.
to a new restaurant or, try a new place you've not been to before. The Venus trying to Pluto is going to add some of that more depth to those connections. So, on the positive side, that day or two might be nice in our interpersonal relationships. Anything else, Stevie, for the rest of this
Yeah,
week?
just I think we spent a lot with the outer, so just to circle around to Sun square Jupiter. So we have the Sun also now is going to be right over Spica. So again, we have this benefic square to exalted Jupiter from the Sun. The Sun is struggling a bit. So this could bring up sacrifices that maybe personal sacrifices. Where do I fall short? Where do others fall short? And also with the ability to sort of own what you have done, own there is a level of ownership that I think with the Sun in Libra that can be magnanimous when you take responsibility for something that you're not proud of. And this sort of square is like, with the Sun, where is your own path leading you astray? In your ethics, in your education, all of these Jupiterian kind of themes, in your religion. It's a great time to just kind of square off with that and also remember Spike is there. So there's a magnanimity to it as well.
I love that, and I love how you're bringing in the fixed stars as well. I think they're absolutely wonderful points. Fantastic. Okay, Stevie, into week 4. Seems to be another busy week. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the Mercury conjunct Mars is interesting there. So, the second week of October, we had the Mercury ingress to Scorpio and squaring Pluto, and this idea of what is appropriate to say and what is the truth. Like, let me dig down to find the truth and the facts. And now Mercury is conjunct Mars, so that's like that's like week 2 on overdrive, basically. Yeah, you have that really harsh words. This is not a day to mince words. People will probably be very, very direct or very secretive. Secret communications going on there could happen.
Great point, Stevie. And I've got this feeling for week 4, as we're saying, with this Mercury in Scorpio conjunct Mars. It's almost got the statement of those be fighting words. But unlike, say, a Mars in Aries, which I see the difference of, a Mars in Aries being like the flamethrower, it's cardinal, it's taking
Mhm.
action. But with this fixed water, that Mars in Scorpio is more like a sniper out in the woods. And so there might be an element here of, like you said, Stevie, secretivism Or maybe, on the shadow side, maybe an element of verbal backstabbing. Maybe you've got some people, co-workers, who are maybe talking or plotting behind your back because this Mars and this Scorpio energy is very, very good at strategic planning. So again,
Hmm.
it's not like that Mars in Aries where it's just a flamethrower and it goes for it. It's going to take its time. But on the positive side, you can use that energy efficiently for your own life. And if you want to, as you said, Stevie, get down to the nitty gritty and down to the details. Now, I'm interested to know your thoughts on this, Stevie, because on the 21st, Mercury will start entering its pre-shadow period. Now, I'm interested to know your thoughts because I'm still on the fence. I know some astrologers will talk about the shadow periods, and some astrologers will just completely ignore it and not think it's significant. But where do you stand with this, Stevie? I'm not quite sure where I stand with the shadow periods.
Yeah, I think some are more pronounced than others, but I stand with them for sure. I do. I especially post shadow as well. Yeah, pre-shadow is definitely foreshadowing. And it could be in this scenario that the things that you say right now behind closed doors could come out later, basically. Um, so, because this retrograde includes part of Sagittarius too. So you have the oops, cat's out of the bag, Mercury sign, and then you have the super secretive. So I think for in this case especially, it's like, oh yeah, what's gonna happen in Scorpio that gets outed in post shadow Sagittarius? What happens in Scorpio doesn't stay in Scorpio once Mercury gets into Sag. So, yeah, I definitely say if you are one of these people who's prone to kind of gossiping or plotting, don't plot during a shadow period, Wait till, wait till Mercury is in a better position. Wait till the moon. I mean, we do have a waning moon, which is good for plotting too, basically. But don't plot in the shadow periods. Yeah, that's gonna come back out. I think so.
I love those points because, as you say, we're going to have Mercury from the fixed water into the mutable fire, but then, of course, we're retrograding when we get into Sagittarius and then back again. So maybe, as you said, not a good time to plot, but also, like you said, the new moon. This is obviously always a great time to set intentions, but
Hmm.
again, just be mindful. There seems to be a lot of mercurial things going on this month, so
Hmm.
I think the bottom line is just again be careful of what you're saying, but you can still use this energy to achieve quite a lot, especially in
Yeah.
the realms of ideas and things of this nature.
Yeah, and it's
And
like you said, investigative journalism stuff. So it's maybe, in Sag, we'll get some pretty big headlines that, this shadow period might actually be a period where misinformation, people doing the deep digging, or figuring out where to go back over when the retrograde occurs.
such a great point. And I think this is reinforced by Neptune dipping its toes retrograde back into Pisces, because as you said at the beginning, Steve, we were still not quite into the new world yet. Now, this has been going on for a while, but I can't help but have the sense of, again, this Neptune going back into this wide, expansive, mutable waters. And it seems we're living in a time where beliefs outweigh facts. This is reinforced by the North Node in Pisces. We've got the South Node, you know, um, hitting all the Virgo. So I just get this sense of, that what people believe nowadays seems to be more important than what the evidence is or what the facts are. And unfortunately, we seem to be living in societies where we're living in kind of in a post-truth world
Hmm.
where facts don't matter anymore. Everyone is so siloed in their own realities
Hmm.
that it's just about what people feel and believe rather than what the empirical facts are. And I think that's very unfortunate because I don't know how we're going to survive as societies moving forward with this kind of ideal. So unfortunately, I think we might be dipping our toes back into again that realm of beliefs over facts. Stevie, I don't what you think on that.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I would say too. It's that it is the one step back, and yep, you have Neptune back there with Saturn, and so you just have to be like, okay, we thought we made it out without the Salem witch trials part two, but now we have to be like, okay, now I'm hearing the Jezebel witches. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh. We're seeing, these authoritarian kind of crackdowns, but like this Neptunian delusion is the literal like mechanism that this Neptunian belief is the mechanism that is, people really it is. It feels like for the first time in my life, I believe Pisces is everyone or whatever because it's mass psychosis. And it's like it's like, yeah, Pisces does represent the mass like unconscious because there is psychosis going on. I think Neptune in Pisces is going to is definitely going to blur those lines again. And we might see some this actually makes me think the world market stuff too is going to be like what is going on? So I think Neptune and fire is accelerating these inflation high percentages of everything, and I kind of think Neptune and Pisces is going to muddy those waters a little bit, and somehow, it could be aid given out. It could be some kind of like, let's just fix it that doesn't really actually fix it. But it is confusing just thinking about it.
It really is really great points. But I think, if we're taking a lighter note on this, and of course we're talking about a generational planet, so look at your own chart and see if you have personal planets in connection. But on the positive side, this might be a time, Neptune going back into those mutable waters of taking a stroll down a big body of water, down the lake, or again, if you're artistically inclined, picking up a paintbrush and doing watercolors, things of this nature, that might be a good outlet with the collective chaos that's going on. So that would be my advice for something like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we have the sun entering Scorpio. So, uh, again, we had Mars, then Mercury, now the sun in Scorpio. So we're dealing with the scorpionic issues. People, again, we might see more, a little bit withdrawal, going inward, like planning, a little bit restrained on your actions. That doesn't mean, again, when you're a sniper, that doesn't mean that you're not going to hurt somebody with your actions. So don't be, Scorpio can make you really good at picking the right time to to unleash yourself. So, I think we should all just be mindful about that as we see the sun enter Scorpio. But I'm excited to see more of the deep, dedicated ideas, theories, stuff coming up from underground. Um, Scorpio is sort of like a really solid place, as opposed to like a fixed sign like Aquarius. I think Aquarius is a little bit hard to read. Comparatively, Leo is sort of like this super bombastic. Scorpio is dedicated. It's just dedicated. So I think what, you had brought up, Cal, earlier too, is just really this commit level of commitment to what you're doing and this drive to do it. And the sun entering Scorpio is a great time to do that. I think if people are looking to start like a health routine for muscle building, I think this is a good time. When the sun is in Scorpio, Mars is in Scorpio, you actually start a habit and this fixed sign, like you will carry it on. It'll be easy to continue it at this point. So considering that.
I think that that's brilliant advice. And to your point, and that key word of determination, and you really do get that in fixed water. So I think that's wonderful advice. If you're looking to change up your health regime, I think this is a really great time to do it. That's
Mhm.
brilliant. And for me, yeah, when we get to the likes of October 24th, now I mentioned this last month when we had a connection, and I can't remember the connection, but I was talking about last month that we might see a leader of some kind either falter or there might be health conditions. Now, I'm not going to mention the name of this because I'm not in the mood to be in terms of controversy, but we did see in some ways a thought leader get taken out. And when this comes around, I know this is only brief, but we're going to have Sun square Pluto. So again, I wonder if there's going to be another leader around the world that brushes up against maybe some sort of vitality issues, maybe health issues, or things of this nature. And it doesn't always have to happen on the date, it can be building up to this. a couple of days around it. But I would maybe just keep an eye out for this week and see if anything does happen in terms of the mundane sense of this Sun square Pluto. And it might be interesting to see that as we go through the weeks.
Yeah, yeah, we have Sun square Pluto, and I think that I mean, even in a mundane in a personal sense, that is you coming up against a power structure, you know? So it is like, what is the power structure going to be? Is it going to be another person? Is it going to be a bureaucratic institution? Is it going to be two world leaders? But there is, and you know, again, we have to look to Mars, which is going to be ruling the sun from Scorpio. So there is a level of like being locked and loaded and sort of ready to deal with drama. So I don't think the sun is going to be backing away from that drama. But luckily, we do have Mercury trine Jupiter, and so again, Cal, maybe some of this investigative journalism is going to come out. Maybe some kind of goodwill, and you know, with Mercury trining from a fixed sign to the cardinal, it gives us a little more hope for like a lasting commitment that is made, a lasting agreement. Mercury could be, you know, agreements in terms of like the fine print on who gets what to come to the agreement. So it's a good time for you know, we are in Mercury shadow, but I don't want us to get stuck there. I think it's good, it's useful to look at it. But at this point, if you have Mercury trine Jupiter and you have an opportunity to sign a document you've needed to sign, or if there is an economic boon that you can get yourself committed to, I think this is like an opportunistic time to take that up. So yeah, I mean, the only thing you could recommend warn against is possibly like overspending on something. But again, if Jupiter is in Cancer, you're spending it on something really good. So it's probably worth the investment. So yeah, and then you have Mercury trine Saturn. We don't like the retrograde of it all, but again, it's a fixed sign, trining Saturn, so it could be a long-lasting agreement. I say agreement because we have a couple of Mercury trines here. So if there are things that you're sort of on the fence about agreeing to, purchasing, signing, I think you'll come into clarity at the end of October.
Absolutely. Wonderful advice. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, Stevie, into week five, our last week. What are your thoughts?
Yep, Mars trine Jupiter. So again, really good time for working out. Also swimming. You got it with all of these water planets. We have Mercury trine Neptune. So that's also it's not the opposition, but with Mercury trining Neptune, you have to have caveat the rose-colored glasses there, or you know, spinning a line that kind of also overcommitting to something. You know, Mars is in Scorpio. You think you have all this energy. You think you can do all this stuff. So then you want to agree to it, especially when Mercury trines Neptune. Um, Mercury is like go, go, go. And so yeah, Mercury might be you might be agreeing to too much. And when Mercury hits Sagittarius, it's like, oops, what did I what did I say I would do?
Yeah, great point. And with Mercury going into its detriment, it just ties into this sense, like I thought with Neptune, of beliefs being again bigger and more important than the facts. And it's quite interesting as we go into Sagittarius, where the dynamic shift between fixed water and mutable fire is one of the most contrasting ones. So into this Mercury, we're less dealing with the practical day-to-day realities or withholding information. And here, on the positive end, this is great for the larger ideals, or if you have philosophical musings that you like to write down. This Sagittarian Mercury is about the bigger picture. We're not talking about the nitty-gritty and the details. And I always like to tell this story. I've got a friend with his Mercury in Sagittarius, and it's quite funny. This might give you a flavor. And I'm not saying this is every Mercury in Sagittarius person, but this is a story I tell. But I asked him once, I was like, I really liked his shirt. We were going out for a night out, and I said, "Where did you get your shirt from?" So 10 minutes later, it wasn't just, "Oh, I got my shirt from the men's warehouse," or something like a simple statement. It was literally, the leading up to getting the shirt, why he needed the shirt, the history of the shirts he's had, and then how he got to traveling to get to the place. So it was literally 10, 15 minutes. And that's what I love about Mercury and Sagittarius sometimes, because it's not that fixed water where you might have an answer that's quite, straightforward or not, but quite short. But with this Mercury and
Hmm.
Sagittarius, we might be having conversations that just really tail off into different tangents. I mean, I know this. I've got Mercury in Pisces, which traditionally is not in a great place, but this ability to go on tangents and talk about the bigger picture. So this might be a great time to sit around the fireplace. If it's starting to get cooler where you are, if you're in the
Hmm.
northern hemisphere, it's a great time to, get the wood on the fire, sit around the fire and talk about the bigger picture and things of this nature, which I think is the positive for this
Hmm.
Mercury entering Sagittarius. Sorry, Stevie, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah,
Where
that
were we
was
going with this?
perfect. That was absolutely perfect. Yeah, and it's gonna be, crazy stories this time because Mercury is gonna oppose Uranus right off the bat. And so it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be really fun stories. Obviously, Uranus could be quite harsh. Um, so explosive words, really disruptive communication. That could be like issues with finances for sure on a mundane level. But at the same time, it is, a crazy story. It is a fun story. It is unique. And it's not about getting the facts right, it's about telling the tale. It's exactly like what you said. It's really about telling the tale and having somebody understand what happened from an experiential level, which you're not even doing anything, but the story is so alive within you that you really are experiencing it. So, that was a great way to put that, Cal. I love that.
Yeah, and I love your points as well, Stevie. And again, with that Mercury rubbing shoulders with Uranus. And this could be, again, I think this is a whole month really to have a pen and paper close by,
Mm,
because here we might be getting, collective insights or brilliant insights out of nowhere. And this is a great time to just jot any notes down and any ideas that you have for the immediate future or further down the line.
hmm.
Absolutely wonderful. Well, Stevie, as always, thank you so much for going through each week of the weeks of October. And next, we're going to go into our rising signs. Okay, Stevie, into our rising signs. Let's look at our Aries rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Hmm. So first thought is, you have your domicile lord, also in domicile, and so a liveliness. Also, Saturn is gone. I know that happened last month or the month before, but yeah, so then this month Neptune is leaving, and I feel like the Aries risings are gonna have a little break for a minute. There's like, Mars isn't doing anything too bad, and everything's gone. So if, yeah, I think just a sense of relief, a sense of like, pause. Is everything really paused? I mean, you might be in disbelief. Really, you might be feeling, pulled back, even. So a lot of stuff happening with Mars, a lot of activity in with Mercury meeting Mars later in the month. So you all could be some of the ones who are revealing stuff, who are bringing some information out to light. Um, yeah.
Yeah, really great point, Stevie. And as you're saying, there might be a sense of a bit more ease for you, Aries rising. I mean, even though that Mars doesn't see your ascendant and
Mm-hmm.
it's hidden there in the eighth, it is in its domicile. So there might be a slight sense of, empowerment to a certain degree. But I think for you this month, Aries rising, it's more about the others. We've got more of the personal planets in the area of the chart where we could be talking about co-workers, significant relationships, business partners, shared resources. So this is really a month where it's less about you to a certain degree and it's more about your relationships with others in terms
Mm-hmm.
of these transits. Of course, you have to look at your own natal chart and see what connections these are making, but there's going to be an emphasis here. That sun is going to highlight the whole sign, seventh house. So, working with, working out your relationships with others And, that Venus is going to be really nice when she starts to move into the whole sign seventh house. So this may be a great time if you're in a long-term committed relationship to try something different, go out and go to a nice restaurant, things of this nature. And really, yeah, like you're saying, Stephen, there's a bit more ease, I think, for you,
Mhm.
Aries Rising this month. Now, we talked about before when a planet stations to go direct or retrograde, it's usually one of the loudest planets in the sky. And for you, it's Pluto in the 11th whole sign house. So you might see some themes pop up around there. More so if you have personal planets connected to Pluto. We're still talking about a generational planet, but this is going to be a long theme. Maybe something comes up around power structures, around, if you're involved in community groups, things of this
Mhm.
nature. There may be a story that comes around. As Stevie is saying, that Saturn has dipped back into your whole sign 12th
Mhm.
house, and that Neptune will be coming along as well. So just be
Mhm.
mindful, especially if you have early degrees of Aries rising. Let us know in the comments how you've been dealing with both those planets, because that can't be an easy time, especially if you've got early degrees of
Mhm.
those, or really any, or even late degrees. If you've got in your natal chart any late degrees of mutable signs, let us know how that, the Saturn and
Mhm.
Neptune ultimately are going to be working with you there.
Mhm.
And yeah, any more thoughts on that, Stevie?
Yeah, just that we're gonna also see Mercury and the Sun square Jupiter, and then you're gonna see Mercury and Mars trine Jupiter. So again, what Cal is saying about relationships, others, and that's gonna somehow cause friction or just cause attention to the fourth house. So if you've already got a sense of what Jupiter in the fourth house is doing for you, that stuff could intensify during this month when those squares and trines get activated.
Wonderful point. And we've talked about this before, but that Jupiter is a larger story, and it's still going to
Mhm.
be in your whole sign fourth for a while. So on the positive end for this, wonderfully exalted Jupiter in the fourth is, if you're looking maybe to expand the home, things of this nature, you're going to be maybe tying this in with some of the planets coming into your whole sign eighth house and talking
Mhm.
about shared resources. Maybe that's a conversation you'll have with a
Mhm.
partner, whether you're looking to maybe expand the home or things of that nature. But with that Jupiter there, depending on what else is going on in your chart, it might be a decent time to do things of this nature.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay, into our Taurus rising friends. Stevie, your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, Taurus rising friends are, we have the Venus trine Taurus by sign here in the fifth. So hopefully, um, you've been editing your artwork. You've been, messing with colors, making it refined. I also really like Venus in Virgo. I always get reminded that I'm pretty sure it's in the chart of Instagram. And of course, it's like it's everything is aesthetically pleasing, obviously up to a fault as things can be. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's only up to a fault. It is the ability, like you said, to shape and mold things into such precision that creates such a pleasurable experience. So I think Venus ruled people, especially the Tauruses, you might want to get a haircut. You might be changing your look a little bit if you're not working on your art. Um, and then you're gonna see your rising sign Lord move into domicile in Libra, and we'll have the aversion, but again, we'll have that level of ability to do what it wants to do, this kind of security, and you might feel a little pep in your step in that instance.
Wonderful points, and the points we made at the beginning of the video that this month has a potential for the Venus ruled signs like myself, Libra Rising, and for you, Taurus Rising, that, especially with your chart, we've got Venus in her joy in the fifth. So
Mhm.
if you've got any creative endeavors on the go, this would be a wonderful time to, pick up a paintbrush or do something that's, if you're artistically inclined, or go and enjoy a day out at the museum, things of this nature. This is a
Mhm.
wonderful time to do that because you've got the double whammy of this Venus, not only in its joy in the fifth, And also, if you've got, children, this is a nice time to do creative games with them. But then you're going to have the double whammy with this Venus because that Venus eventually will go into the domicile. And yes, it's the whole sign sixth house, so not always the best house, but still, in terms of being the chart ruler, this is a dignified Venus. And really,
Mhm.
for you, Taurus rising, the emphasis is on the other with a lot of these personal planets. We've got the Venus, the Sun, the Mercury, and the Mars. We're dealing with other people. So whether that's people in your immediate environment, like children, it could be in the sixth, we're talking about co-workers, or we're talking about in the seventh, partnerships. Now, the
Mhm.
only niggle or possible downside is that this Mars is strong, but it's going through your whole sign seventh house. Now, anytime a planet becomes angular in your chart by transit or whatever chart you're working with, it usually becomes quite a loud planet. Any planet like a handlebar, it becomes loud. So the shadow side of this, there may be conflicts with significant others. Now, this doesn't have to be partners, this could be business partners, it can be
Mhm.
platonic as well. So maybe watch out for some conflicts. And,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
Mars, I'm trying to remember what degree that Mars is going to get to, but depending what your ascendant degree is, just
Mhm.
be mindful of that when that Mars transits opposite your ascendant, and just be
Mhm.
careful with, if you're cooking in the kitchen and making a nice meal with that Venus in the fifth, just watch out for sharp objects and things of this nature. And of course, that's, we always say with one transit, it never confirms anything, but sometimes just keep an eye out for things of that nature with that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you have everything that's going to be going into Scorpio. Mercury and the Sun are both going to be squaring the Pluto in the 10th, and then you're going to get that Pluto direct in the 10th. So again, I think especially when Cal mentioned business partners, that one really sticks out to me. So it's this level of 10th house authority and that power struggle with this one-on-one relationship zone. So are you in business with anyone, or is there an interpersonal dynamic with your superior that is something you're going to have to face, but those squares are not great for that and that direct motion. There is that balm of Mercury and Mars trining Jupiter, and Venus will sextile Jupiter. Um, so you will get those moments of ease within it. But I think what Cal said was great. Just, it's a punchy month for you.
Well, wonderful point, Stevie. And I think if in terms of relationships, because they seem to be highlighted, you might have better times going out for meals with co-workers later in the month and maybe one-on-one significant relationships. But of course, you always got to look at your own natal chart and see what's going on. This is just an overview of the
Mhm.
transits. Now, with the Saturn dipping its toes back into Pisces in your whole sign 11th house, Neptune is going to follow along at some point. When the planets are going retrograde, maybe just revisiting certain themes. So for you in the whole sign 11th house, if you're involved with, say, large community groups, things of this nature, those planets might be just treading old water and seeing what's going on in that area of life. So that's something to keep an eye out. And to Stevie's point, we're going to have that Pluto station to go direct. Now, if you've got any personal planets, especially connected to this Pluto, have a look at that. Even though we're talking about a generational planet, it's still quite loud in your chart. It's in the angular 10th house. So, to Stevie's point before, maybe those themes, maybe having, if you are having any power struggles with bosses or higher ups, things of that nature, or maybe you found yourself in a position of power to a certain degree. So, yeah, keep an eye
Mhm.
out for that Pluto
Mhm.
as we get deeper into the month. Wonderful. Okay, into our Gemini rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Mhm. Yeah, so the Gemini rising friends somewhat are acclimating to Uranus in the first, I'm sure. Um, you are gonna have the trine from Mercury to the first and all of the fifth house action, including Venus. So for you, I think this is a really fun month. I think Mercury going into the sixth house could put some emphasis on the hard work aspect of it. You have Mars in House Joy there, and so it's really as the domicile lord being present, especially, it's really going to be like kind of demanding hard work just because it's the natural state of things expected in this environment. Um, that could be work with your animals if you have pets, maybe new walking routines, or maybe there's some issues with fleas or things like that. Could be, in the worst case scenario, a health issue, and we have Mars being a needle, so maybe having to get your blood drawn or do some kind of Marsy sixth house stuff. Um, but for the most part, I think the transits transiting through the fifth, getting to that point is going to be pretty fun. And then you have that point, and it's sort of going to be hard work, I think. You're going to have the trine to Jupiter eventually, but that even to me is like, so what's going to cost you money from your health or pet? So, just watch out for those expenses that might come with that square. But by that time, you're going to have Venus in the fifth, trining the first. So I think you're going to feel cute, and you should feel cute.
Those are wonderful points, Stevie. And I think to Stevie's point, I had the same themes in my mind. It seems like work is going to be a key area of life this month
Mhm.
because with your chart ruler, this Mercury is going to be a very busy body this
Mhm.
month with lots of connections, with lots of different planets. And for you, ultimately, that's going to move into your whole sign sixth house. As Stevie's mentioned, you've got the Mars transiting through the sixth. So there might be, again, just maybe works piling up or a lot of dealings with co-workers, things of this nature. And
Mhm.
especially when that Mercury meets up with the Mars, there may
Mhm.
be some cutting words if you're dealing with a co-worker you're maybe not getting on so well with. Maybe there's a time that you have to sit down and maybe have a serious conversation with some of your colleagues, things of that nature. Because I think this is reinforced by the greater malefic dipping its toes back into the whole sign 10th house. So I
Mhm.
just get this sense of career relatedness and maybe having to tread old ground and think about, career or those elements of, again, working with co-workers or bosses, things of this nature. So that's something that might come up for you. But to Stevie's point, I'm really looking, I think, joyful for you when we get this Venus going into her domicile. And in the fifth house, I mean, eventually, as Stevie's saying, that's going to make a nice connection with your ascendant, whatever
Mhm.
degree that is. That's a wonderful time. I would say if work is getting a bit cumbersome and it's getting you irritated, if you can and you have the means to, just try and get off for a spa day or just use that Venus in the fifth and do something pleasurable or creative, even, just to take a bit of a break. Because as Stevie is saying, you might have already felt this Uranus that's dipped its toes into your whole sign first house, especially if you've got early degrees of Gemini Rising. So, yeah, I would say overall, there's going to be an emphasis on work, but certainly enjoy that Venus in the fifth and, really take a break, I think, when you need it. Because I think with Mercury being so active this month and that being your chart ruler, I think there's going to be a lot on your plate and a lot of thinking to do in many areas
Mhm.
of life.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wonderful. I was trying to think. I don't know if I was going to say something else. Can't remember. Okay, yeah, moving on. Okay, into our Cancer rising friends.
Mhm.
Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so Cancer risings are going to be experiencing the gambit of the squares. Um, to Jupiter and to their ascendant, and then you're gonna get the trines, which is nice. So I think it's gonna be a pretty busy time for all of the cardinal people. I think actually Aries might be the only ones who feel a little bit relieved just based on their first house situation, but everyone else is like, what? Moved out of what? I'm still getting hit from left, right, and center. And so it's just that time of the year where it's cardinal season, baby, and you're being asked a lot, and then you have this Jupiter there, so you're being really asked to give a lot, and Jupiter, that exalted Jupiter might be bringing a lot of amazing opportunities for you, but it also might be bringing with it a lot of very high levels of expectations for you, and these squares might be really challenging. Can I meet these expectations, and where do I have to reduce my capacity to give. So that could happen, especially since we're looking at the fourth house with most of these movements with stuff at home and family, and you might just feel like very busy at home. Um, when we see everything move to the fifth house, I think we'll definitely, especially if it's home related and then child related, could carry on in those shines, but it could also just give you that sort of boost of energy of like, okay, this isn't the square anymore. I'm back to smooth sailing a little bit. So I kind of look forward to that for you guys. I know that Leos and Cancers are dealing with post-eclipse hangovers for the next 6 months. Just because your domicile lords went into into a nodal moment. Um, So, I think it's mellowing out by this point, and hopefully you feel back on track. You're gonna have angular lunations. So again, you're just gonna be busy.
Wonderful point, Stevie. And as you were saying, I think for you, Cancer Rising, there's almost an element of home life, private life versus the outer life. So it's
Mhm.
quite interesting with your transits for your chart, is we've got a lot of these outer planets like above the horizon and the social planets as well. So there's a lot going on there, especially if they make any connections to your personal planets in your own chart. But then a lot of these personal planets, the transits in personal planets, all highlighting the private part of your life. And I think the fourth house is going to be emphasized. Of course, we've got the sun highlighting this area of life. We're going to have that Venus gaining, going into a home sign. So this might be a nice time to have some, creative pleasure at home, or
Mhm.
beautify the home in some way. If you've got the means to, this is a great time to, especially if you're more introverted than most, then this might be a nice time to maybe just, go back into your hearth, go back into your castle, and just recharge if life has been a bit cumbersome. And this is a great time to do that this month. I think that Mars has got dignity in its own sign, going through your whole sign fifth house. Now, eventually, depending what ascendant degree is, maybe it's already hit it, or maybe it's about to. But you may possibly may have like a burst of energy, so you might have more energy to beautify the home or do things of this nature. This might be a nice time for you. And yeah, the Jupiter, the exalted Jupiter in the first can go two ways. It can certainly magnify yourself and your personality. It's always great for if you need a bit of stage presence, just
Mhm.
the way you come across to other people. So if you're, late degrees of Cancer Rising, it's a great time to be on stage and give a speech and all those different things. We've got the North Node highlighting the ninth house. So if you're, an astrology speaker, this is always a great time. And but on the flip side of that Jupiter is if you've been looking to start a diet, for example, that's never the easiest with Jupiter hanging around in the first house. But there are
Mhm.
also other connections, and you have to look at your own chart. Now, we talked earlier in the video about when a planet stations to go direct or retrograde, and it seems to be even more potent with the outer planets, just because they have maybe a little bit more vibration. But we're going to have Pluto stationing to go direct. So, depending if it's got any connections in your chart, this might not always be the case, but it's in your whole sign eighth house, which is going to be an issue for decades, essentially. But if anything does come up around those dates that Pluto is stationing, just keep an eye
Mhm.
out for the themes of, shared resources, who's holding the power in your relationships, things of this nature is maybe something you want to keep an eye out for this month. Okay, into our Leo rising friends. Stevie,
Mhm.
your thoughts?
Yeah, Leo risings. Definitely, I think the biggest thing I see is gonna be the Pluto direct for you guys. Now that happens midway through the month, but I think that's just one of the most standout things. But you'll see Mercury ingressing and the Sun ingressing into Scorpio, squaring Pluto as well. So, definitely draws my eye to the seventh house. We have our relationships there. And with the Sun going into squaring Pluto there, really like your own identity might be really wrapped up into this. You might really be personally involved in this in this kind of mundane level square that the rest of us are experiencing. you guys might be the ones who are really feeling it or expressing it or fighting with the people with the structure powers. But for the initial part of it, you have your sun in the thirds with Mercury, so definitely a busy communicating, errands, town. Um, and that is all squaring Jupiter in the 12th there. Um, so I do wonder what that Jupiter is for you guys so far. And 12th house sometimes if it's not a retreat or a place of rest, it can be a place of harboring secrets in the chart. So that square might actually bring out some of these suppressed things or hidden things when you have the 12th house planet being squared, especially by a luminary, you might actually get illuminated on some stuff that you didn't know about before. So I think what your themes here are pretty succinct.
Wonderful point, Stevie. And I'm picking up on what you're saying because it's what I notice as well with Pluto stationing to go direct this month. Now, not only is that significant, especially if it ties into any aspects to your personal planets, but as we mentioned on this channel, that anytime a transiting planet or any planet for that matter, whether it's in your own natal chart or by movement, is that when a planet is angular, it's usually quite loud. Now, this Pluto is going to be a huge story for the next couple of decades, so this might not be immediate, but with it stationing to go direct, there may be some issues in terms of the dynamics between your relationships. This can be significant others or can be platonic, could be business partners, things of this nature. So I'd certainly watch out for the themes around this Pluto, and again, especially if it ties into your natal chart. And again, especially if you do have early degrees of Leo rising, it's something to keep an eye out for. What else is going on for you, Leo rising? So you're probably a bit annoyed with that greater malefic Saturn going back into your whole sign eighth house. It's highlighting the area along with the North Node. So there might be, again, we've got this theme, not only with the nodes, the North Node and the South Node, we've got the Venus and the Saturn. So we've got a bit of a financial picture here. So it might just be a month where you may be reassessing your finances. This could be to do with shared resources, or if you're on your own, then it could be, how you're dealing with money, how you're spending, if you borrow money, things of this nature. That just might be a theme that repeats itself as the retrograde planets come back over old territory. So that might be something that comes out. But with Venus there going through the second now, it's only going to be not there for too much longer. But if you are looking for a side hustle, this might be a good time to try something new, try maybe a small revenue stream, something a little bit different, and that might help out. But again, we've got this angular Mars. This is another planet that's angular in your charts. Now, this can manifest many different ways, but we've got a strong Mars going through your fourth house. Now, on the shadow side, it could be conflicts with those at home or conflicts in your private life. But alternatively, it could also mean just a lot of energy focused in the area of life. So you can use that energy to do what you need to do in your private life. And I've just got the sense with you, Leo Rising, that you might find this month a little bit draining. We've got your chart ruler in its fall. So there may be some vitality issues in terms of just feeling a little bit less than, what's the word, Stevie? Just less than your usual self might be an issue. We've got
Mhm.
that Saturn retrograde, it's ruling your six. Now, this is not going to be for every Leo rising. This is just a general interpretation of the transits. But I would say don't panic, work your way through it, communicating with partners and communicating in general is going to probably help if you just talk to other people and talk about your issues. I think that's going to be really helpful for you.
Mhm.
And then, especially as that Venus goes into her home sign through the third. So, yeah, just for you, Leo Rising, if you need to Stevie's point, we've got that exalted Jupiter for a while now in the whole sign 12th. So if you've got the means to and life is getting a bit cumbersome or you're feeling that little bit of drain of vitality, then if you can, maybe go near a big body of water or just take a little bit of a retreat if you have the means to.
Yeah.
This is a great way to relax a bit.
Yeah, put yourself on a timeout, basically.
Time out, relax, chill
Timeout.
out. And if you're in the northern hemisphere, it might be a time where it's cooling down a bit.
Mhm.
So, enjoy yourself and take a bit of time out for yourself. And then as we get further into the months coming up, you might have that re-energized sense again, especially eventually when that Mars gets to into Sagittarius. Actually, is that when's that Mars going to go retrograde next? I'm trying to think.
Oh, it's not for 2 years now, but we are coming
Oh,
off
sure.
of that from last year, so we're good. We're good.
Perfect. Okay, great.
We're
So for you,
good.
Leo
We're just
Rising.
getting back to normal here. This is our first domicile since retrograde, so we're like, let's go, baby. Let's
I
go.
love it. I love it. So eventually, Leo Rising, when that Mars gets into your fifth, maybe that'll perk up a
Hmm.
bit more with a bit more fire. So yeah, thank you, Stevie. I just went off
Hmm.
the top of my head there.
Hmm.
Perfect. Okay, let's go into our Virgo Rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so the Virgo and Pisces, you all just had eclipses last month, and now you have Venus passing over the nodes, and you have other planets that are going to aspect the nodes. And so I think for you in particular, a lot of the themes from last month might actually get re-triggered, but in different ways of dealing with them. In the Venusian way, when Mars trines the North Node, and so on. And so I think there is like a getting grounding for you all that you might be experiencing, or you might still be like feeling the effects. And I think that just um in your true mutable way, just really having to be open to change at this time. Um, especially because we have Neptune that's going to go back angular for you, Virgos. And if you have a later rising degree, especially, you're feeling it already with Saturn there, and you're going to feel it even more. And it might just be like, wow, the eclipse and now this ingress, like what is happening? And then you have, your domicile Lord Mercury is unbeholden or reverse the ascendant for now and is going to be really busy. So I think once Mercury is in Scorpio, there's going to be this level of it's getting under control for you. But it is probably going to be you're probably going to be one of the like very busy heart putting things to work of the zodiac, just playing catch up. And maybe for you too, you might look a little deeper into that shadow period and really be like, okay, what now? What can I take care of now that won't screw me over in 4 weeks or so?
Wonderful point, Stevie. And as you were saying, Stevie, for Virgo Rising, I mean, I would certainly understand it if you felt a bit jittery recently. Not if you only if you had the eclipses, but particularly for this month, there's so much. It's really turning into a mercurial month, and with that Mercury being your chart ruler, there is so much going on, and all the different aspects it's going to make to all the different planets. And what Stevie you're saying as well, I think when we get some of that fixed water, it might just I won't say grounding's not the right word, but it might just help maybe sort out or strategically plan things that
Hmm.
you need to do next because it's a lot going on for you. And again, especially with those eclipses, and certainly let us know in the comments how that's been treating you. I think the nice thing here is that we're for a brief time, we've got the second half of Venus going through your whole sign first house, and especially if you have mid to late degrees of Virgo rising, if in terms of mind matters, or if you're feeling a bit skittish or just a bit jittery, this might be a nice time to, if you have the means to, just go and treat yourself for a day. Maybe just go and, have a spa day, go and treat yourself just to calm and soothe the mind and the nerves, possibly to a certain degree, and go treat yourself. Because I think that Venus is going to be quite nice. But there seems to be a lot of activity. The sun's highlighting the whole sign second house. Mercury's going to still be there for a time. Venus is going to come through into her domicile in the whole sign second house. So, this is a brief time. Maybe if you're thinking about extra revenue streams or different things you want to do in terms of finances, might be a
Hmm.
nice time to do this as it's being highlighted. And again, you can use your chart ruler Mercury to plan out the next steps and what you need to do. Because I think right now, what me and Stevie were talking about before is that on the collective, we're all living in a cost of living crisis right
Hmm.
now. But for you, if you get that Mercury in your whole sign third house in the fixed water, it might be a great time to strategically plan all those matters concerning finances. and things of
Mm,
that nature. Now, Saturn is dipping its toes back into your whole sign seventh house, and it's angular, so it tends to be quite loud. Neptune is going to retrace its steps as well. So it just might be recurring themes or tying up loose ends when it comes to if you're been having any issues in terms of relationships or business partners. You just might find for a time that some of those themes might come back up again. And talking about Pluto station in direct, this is going to be in your whole sign sixth house. Now, this is going to be a big story for the next couple of decades. So this
mhm,
might not be immediate, but if you've got any personal planets connected to this Pluto, it might show itself. But really, whole sign sixth house over the next couple of decades, we're talking many different themes can manifest. It could be, restructuring your day-to-day life or finding your power, I guess, in that sense, or maybe you're dealing with co-workers, so if something comes up, don't be surprised this month with that Pluto stationing to go direct at this
mhm,
time. But another positive, we've got the greater benefic. Jupiter we'll get to about 24 degrees at the end of this month, something like
mhm,
that. So this is still a great period of time in terms of if you've been involved in any community groups, community events. I think this will be, a nice place to enjoy those events. And you've got that exalted Jupiter ruling the seventh, as that might help out some of those areas of life as well. But
mhm,
yeah, I'll just say overall, Virgo rising, if life is getting a bit irritating or cumbersome, certainly, treat yourself if you have the means
mhm.
to
Mhm.
at this time.
Yeah, Cal, I really liked your point about Jupiter because it's not just busy for you guys with Mercury, it's this mercurial month, but also Jupiter is the planet that's getting the most aspects towards it throughout the month. So
Mm.
your partners are also going to be really busy. So, yeah, I think if you're not busy, you're probably just trying to keep up with your partner's schedule. Great point with that.
Yeah, great point, Stevie. And with that Mars going through your whole sign third house, maybe you've got a million emails piling up or things of this nature. So certainly take a break if and when you need
Mhm,
it. Perfect.
mhm.
Okay, into our Libra rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so Libra rising friends are, on the cardinal cross to bear. A lot of action this month. So the 10th house stuff, you all already sort of have a sense of how that's going. And again, at this point, when any planet is cardinal, it's going to be eventually squaring Jupiter right now. And so that's sort of like the big news in the sky in terms of um, just not being absolutely horrible and also just being really active. You have Mercury and the Sun gonna square and trine. You have Mars trine Jupiter later and Mercury. And you have the sextile from Venus. So the work life is gonna be really, really busy. And also the personal self. Everything is moving through your whole first. And, I'm sure that it's like Mars, then Mercury, then the sun, and then it's like finally Venus is gonna be like, don't worry, I'm home. And so I'm really after that initial Neptunian weirdness for you guys, I'm very looking forward to it because I think it'll bring a level of like, even in the chaos, I can still feel good. It'll still be fun. It's sort of giving you that sense of like, magic is what I make it to be. My day is what I make it to be. I don't need any external thing to kind of validate that sense of beauty and wonder. And that's going to be really explosive with the square to Jupiter eventually next month. But I think it's building this month too, where it's really nice for Libra rising. So I'm glad Libra risings are going to have their Venus. Um, Obviously, the next thing after everything moves from your first, it's going to your second. So I think finances are going to be really big, but that's all going to try in that 10th house. So I really think you guys are just going to be a little bit burnt out, but you are going to hopefully feel the rewards from your toiling.
I absolutely love your point, Stevie, especially making magic as you want it to be. Just wonderful points. And speaking as a Libra rising, you're just hitting home on so many points. And I think right now, initially, before we get our chart ruler into a domicile, For me, we've got our chart rule at this moment in time as we're recording this, in fall in the 12th house, we're coming up to that conjunction to the South Node. I've felt a little bit off, not quite on the ball. Maybe we're not quite as charming, maybe, as we usually are. Things of this nature, or if you're feeling a bit low in energy, I certainly am. Certainly have been for this last week or two. But I'm really, really looking forward to our chart ruler gaining that dignity and coming through our
Mhm.
first house. Because if we have feeling a bit, in terms of health or lack of vitality, I think, as this our chart ruler moves through the first, it's a great time for us maybe to go and just enjoy ourselves for the day if we've got the means to. Like I plan to go and have a massage and just relax and
Mhm.
decompress after a stressful and busy time in terms of work life. Because you're correct, Stevie. There's been a lot going on. I came back from the Kepler Symposium. It was a wonderful time, but I'm exhausted. And what's not helping, and this speaks to the Saturn that's dipping its toes back into our whole sign sixth house, and Neptune's going to join again. Even though I had the best of intentions and I had been doing pretty well, my diet and my day-to-day life in terms of what I'm eating a lot of crap in the last few weeks, so I'm not helping myself.
Mhm.
So my advice would be is that I'm going to start working with that Saturn to restructure my daily routines and be mindful of diet and health and all these key
Yeah.
components because I'm
Yeah.
starting to feel that not only that chart ruler with that lack of dignity, but I'm
Yeah.
feeling that Saturn. It's my outer set malefic as well, and I'm like, I really need to get back into that Saturn discipline of getting back in my health and routine because I can feel my
Yep,
vitality
and you
draining.
have Venus like it's going to oppose that Saturn before it's like one more like one more strain before so it's really is and you have the sun in fall and Venus in fall so your chart ruler and the planet that is just fallen and so you guys must be exhausted right now. You guys must be. It's a really great point about that sixth house and getting it's sort of like guess what you didn't do? And you're like, damn it, I thought I had that under control. But like, yeah, and then you have Venus going to oppose it. So I think that opposition from what you're speaking to is the perfect time to like sit down with it, face it head on, and sort of get ready. Another thing for Libra risings is just know that on the 13th, by the 13th, you will have kind of gotten to that point. So if you can, just say no to everything until the 13th. Don't agree to do anything until the 13th. Okay, just say no, stay in the 12th house, and look at yourself sober in the mirror opposite Saturn and start saying yes after the 13th.
This is why I love these conversations because your advice is so spot on. I'm going to make a note of that and be like, okay, I'm going to move stuff until after the 13th
After the
to
13th.
schedule because I'm
Yeah.
like you said, I'm exhausted. I don't know about the rest of you Libra Risings, but I am tired, I am knackered, and we deserve a break at some point. So you let us know in the comments how
Mhm.
life is being treating you. But on the positive side, we've got that greater benefic exalted in our 10th. So in terms of career, not for everybody, you have to look at your own natal charts, but in
Mhm.
terms of career, it's been going very well on my end, Kepler Symposium, really enjoying things like that. But to Stevie's point, a lot of this can be quite exhausting. So that's
Mhm.
something to keep an eye out. But yeah, such wonderful points, Stevie. Absolutely wonderful. Okay, into our Scorpio rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, Scorpio risings are probably feeling pretty good right now, hopefully. I know y'all have a lot of 12th house activity, but it's been a long year for you, and for Aries risings, or for anyone who relies on Mars in any shape or form. Um, and Mars is home and unafflicted right now, so just good on you. And I think that, if you guys are the ones who can lead the charge right now to be like, let's use this energy. It's like you guys are like the boot camp coaches right now for the rest of us. It's like we need you guys to pick us up by our bootstraps or give us bootstraps. Um, a lot of activity is going to be moving from the 12th to the 1st. So again, it is like, ooh, are you guys going to be some of the people revealing information? What information is going to be revealed and what are you guys going to find? Everything's going to try in the ninth house. So if you have educational stuff going on or travel stuff going on, it looks good to me, not bad. So, um, yeah, I think you guys are one of the zodiac folks who sort of have it easier this month, or at least you have. I think with Mars there, you sort of have autopilot on, and you can just go, and you don't really have to try too hard. Hopefully.
Wonderful point, Stevie. And as you were saying, I think for you, Scorpio Rising, maybe you felt as that Mars got into fixed water, got into its home sign. Maybe you felt that rush of energy or felt that extra rush of vitality. Because it's quite
Mhm.
interesting this month because it's kind of a contradiction of energies because you might have felt that rush. And as Stevie's saying, we've got connections up to the ninth house. We've got the fifth going on as well. But what's interesting, we've still got the sun highlighting the 12th house. So
Mhm.
you might be stuck in two camps of, okay, I want to charge ahead, or I still want to be behind the scenes for a little bit longer and maybe just retreat or chill out for a bit. So
Mhm.
depending on, what's going on in your natal chart and what your individual makeup is, you
Mhm.
might be in the two camps of, do I want to just, pull back a bit, stay behind the scenes, or do I want to forge ahead with this very strong chart ruler going through your first house? So yeah, let us know in the comments. Maybe you've had that surge of energy. Now, the only word of caution is, and even though it's your chart ruler, is that especially if you've got, well, that Mars is going to get to, I can't remember what degrees it is now, but depending what your ascendant degree is, sometimes you've got to watch out for Mars coming over the ascendant. Now, you always need multiple confirmations, but just keep an eye on it if you're in the kitchen cooking, things of this nature, any sharp implement objects, just be careful with that cutting of Mars over the ascendant. But otherwise, it could be, as Stevie's saying, a time where you're feeling a bit more vitality and things of
Mhm.
that nature. What's going to be interesting for you as we get deeper into the month is we're going to have Pluto stationing to go direct. And as we said earlier in the video, it's usually one of the loudest planets in the skies, the ones that either station to go direct or retrograde. And for you, it's even louder because it's an angular house for you in your chart. It's in your angular fourth house. Now, of course, this is going to be a generational planet. So if it's connected to your personal planets, it might be more noticeable. And of course, that Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for the next couple of decades. But saying that, maybe something around the home life or the home comes up this month while that planet is vibrating and maybe
Mhm.
bringing up those themes. So just watch out for maybe some themes of the home life for you.
And also, you're gonna have Mercury square Pluto there and the Sun square Pluto there. So again, be careful with your own body doing home repairs or any. If you're, especially if Mars is there and you feel like, oh, I can do this job. If you're not a repairman, don't do the job. Just be careful doing that stuff because that issue. And then also if you're a renter or you have issues with your landlord, this is such a like landlord situation with Pluto, the Lord of Land in your fourth house, and it could just be a bane right now. You could be like really like, do I want to move? So yeah, just if you're dealing with home frustrations, luckily you do have the trine to the fifth house, trine to the ruler of the fifth house. So there are me and Cal always say there's gonna be really difficult things in all of our charts. So we're here to try and find what are the good things because if I have to deal with the crap, there has to be at least one good thing. So it looks like fifth house stuff is, a little heavy with Saturn there, gonna be a little heavy with Venus opposite Saturn, but the ruler of the fifth is in really good shape. So the environment for those long-term changes or long-term commitments to projects and things is really great right now and expansive in the ninth. So.
Such wonderful points, Stephen. I like how you're saying that's what we're trying to do in this series is that we're trying to bring a balance between, strength and weaknesses, possible difficulties versus areas of ease or enjoyment. So I really like you pointed that out. And it's so funny, Stevie, you mentioned landlords because I know a Scorpio Rising who is a landlord. and they're having issues at this time. So anyway, that's really funny
Hmm.
that come
Hmm.
up. But I really like your point about that exalted Jupiter ruling the fifth, and
Hmm.
just Jupiter as that whole story. If you're looking to get back into higher education or you're into astrology, even anything of this nature, if you're looking for a long distance getaway, this
Hmm.
should be, depending on what else is going on in your charts. This Jupiter exalted in the ninth. This is great to maybe have a long distance travel and spread your wings to a certain degree.
Hmm.
Might be a nice
Hmm.
time for that.
Hmm.
Wonderful. Okay, into our Sagittarius rising friends. Stevie,
Hmm.
your thoughts?
Yeah, Sages. So you guys look pretty busy this month too. We've kind of mentioned that Mercury is a key player this month, and so Mercury is going to end up in the first, and it rules your seventh house. So you might be again playing catch up with your partner. You have Uranus over there in the seventh, so I'm sure that's already started to make waves. And by the time Mercury opposes that, it might be time to start facing that. So you might be spending the month like, how do I deal with this Uranus? And then by the end of the month, Mercury is there kind of having been through the 12th, the conjunction with Mars and everything, and sort of like, poof, I'm gonna deal with it now. So I think there's definitely room for a lot of drama, especially with the 12th house being Scorpio for you guys. Don't feed into being the gossiper. The 12th house is like, witchcraft for bad. It's like cursing people and stuff. And so if you are plotting or even gossiping about someone this month with a Mercury transiting the 12th, it's just not going to be a good look when Mercury goes into the first. And then you might get your information mixed up because we mentioned the shadow period. So you might have to go back and restate what you refigure out what you've learned. So there could be a lot of room for confusion. Um, but that to say, I think the Sages are a little bit like annoyed because Jupiter is exalted and is unbeholden to their ascendant. So their ascendant ruler is not visible to their ascendant. But I want to just say that at least for all the planets that are going through Libra, that are going to square your ascendant ruler, those planets are sextiling your ascendant. So, especially if you have those later degrees, there is like a game of telephone happening this month for you where you might be able to get those privileges of Jupiter a little more directly to you by way of these transits. So the planets transiting through Libra that will square Jupiter are also going to sextile your ascendant. There's a little relay of message that you can get from that. So
That was such
shoot your
wonderfully
shot.
put. Shoot your shot. That was such wonderfully put, Stevie. I don't know if I can even add anything to that wonderful statement for Sagittarius Rising, but I like your point you're making. Yeah, there might be a sense of frustration because, we've got this exalted chart ruler, but again, it's not beholden, as you said, to the ascendant. And of course, this has been a bigger picture for quite a while now, so you're probably used to this feeling at this moment in time. But for you, Sagittarius Rising, really for this month, a lot of those personal planets are zipping through your third quadrant in the chart. So it's really the emphasis on society, but society out in public. So whether you're dealing with, minor career things,
Hmm.
that Venus might be nice especially if you've got your midheaven up there.
Hmm.
If that's been going over, maybe you've been in the spotlight some way for a short period of time, or you're maybe looked favorably upon by
Hmm.
superiors, things of this nature. That could be quite nice, especially when it gets some strength with that angularity for that Venus. But we do have the South Node there as well, so it might be a
Hmm.
mixed picture.
Hmm.
We've got the 11th house whole sign magnified this month, so there might be a lot of conversations or activity with community groups or if you're involved in those kind of things. But again, to Stevie's point, a word of caution that Mars is strong, but it's going through your whole sign 12th house. So I always have this sense with Mars transit in the 12th is to Stevie's point, be careful what you're saying or the gossiping, because there might be people behind the scenes trying to make moves that undermine whatever you're trying to do. And with that Mars being strong, those people or the hidden enemies may be successful in what they're trying to enact because it's a very
Mm,
strategic Mars. And as
mm,
we mentioned at the beginning of the video, it's not a Mars in Aries where it's a flamethrower and you can see exactly what's coming at you because it's fast and it's cardinal. This is a far more strategic sniping kind of Mars. So just be mindful of anything like that or any people that you might have pissed off who are scheming behind the scenes. But other than that, I do like the having the benefic angular up there above the horizon. And what else have
mm,
we got going on? We've got that Jupiter exalted in the whole sign, eighth house. So has that eased up, over the best part of how many months now in terms of shared resources? It's ruling the fourth house. Yes, we've got the Greater Malefic coming and retracing its steps into the fourth. So that might be a mixed bag and a mixed picture of home life, which is quite interesting as well. And I think there was something else I was going to say, but it's completely gone out of my mind. But Stevie put it so wonderfully and succinct that that's about all I've got.
mhm. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Okay, into our Capricorn rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, Capricorns are, dealing with the Saturn retrograde again. I mean, we live with a retrograde planet for so many months of our lives. And so we're just in that thing again where we're just not doing anything. Yeah, I think that the Saturn story is again, we're with the cardinal stuff cross here going going on here. Um we have Neptune moving into join Saturn, which I don't really think helps very much. But I do think that we might be feeling maybe not like a release of pressure, but like there's a lull going on since the angularity has sort of changed from Saturn being in the fourth whole sign house to the third whole sign house. Um, and I kind of think that's gonna happen a little bit more once Neptune does move out. But again, it's two steps forward, one back because we're ruled by Saturn here. So we're still living in the old world where other people are moving on, and we're like, we want to move on too. We're ready to move on with you guys. Jupiter in the seventh, so high focus on relationships. I know, you know, relationship stuff for me has been really important as a Capricorn rising. I had a very bad breakup over 12 years ago when Jupiter was transiting my seventh, and this time I joined Codependence Anonymous because I was like, I'm not gonna have a breakup this time. I'm going to fix my relationship. So Jupiter is sort of giving me access to um, other screwed up lunar people, other screwed up relational, having Cancer seventh house, depending on what your moon is, greatly depending on what your moon is. It's a cardinal sign and it's a luminary. The moon is the fastest celestial body, so a lot of us who have a seventh house Cancer, like things are constantly changing in relationship. Things are never stable in relationship. It can really always feel like that. So I think Jupiter is a bomb here, but we are getting all those squares from the 10th. So we are, you know, I think for us, with that exaltation expectation, we are expecting people to show up in ways that they're not able to. We are not showing up in ways in which we feel like we should. There's a lot of that identity stuff. So I think that stuff chilled out a little bit with Saturn going into the third, but I think it will help immensely when Neptune gets out, and then it's all going to come back up with these squares. So that's my little personal experience sermon to those Capricorns who are suffering with me.
I love that, and I feel so much sorry for Capricorns for quite a while now. But I love your points. Now we're just talking about the positive angle because not always that's the case. Because you just had that story talking about that Jupiter 12 years ago being in there. But if we did look at it in terms of the positive end and that exalted Jupiter, there maybe is possibilities to get help and support from, personal one-on-one relationships. And I think ruling
Mm,
the third as well. I think what helps for Capricorn Rising is if you have been going through troublesome times, I think you're going to find the benefit derives from speaking to one-on-one people, whether that's,
mm,
a therapist or a good friend or something like that. I think that's going to really help you flesh out your ideas and your experiences and be a sense of support with that greater benefic. Being angular as well, being quite important. And I do like the look of eventually the other benefic. So we're going to have that Venus come into a domicile in the angular 10th house.
mm,
So this could be, manifest in many different ways. Again, you could be looked favorably upon by superiors, or if you've got a public appearance, like, well, of course, Stevie, being online, this might be beneficial in that sense because there's a lot going up. Because what's
mm,
interesting for Capricorn Rising is you've got a bit of a, I wouldn't, what would I call it, a tug of war, because you've got your chart ruler retrograde, which is probably
mm,
annoying you. It's been angular and fall in Aries, bringing up your home life, and now it's going back into the third, and then obviously eventually it'll go direct and back through. So there's kind of a tug of war between that and a lot of the personal planets right now trying to pull your attention towards career matters of like,
mm,
what am I doing? What do I want to do next? What do I want to achieve? In the greater world. So I think some of the frustration might be that little bit of tug of war between home life and public life. But,
mm,
with support from
mm,
others, I think that's going to help. And I think ultimately with this angular Venus coming through your 10th house, you're going to be seen favorably upon. And maybe,
mm,
not for everybody, but maybe favors might come your way if you
mm.
need them to a certain degree. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And we have I always like to talk about the exaltation lords, of course. Those are some of my faves, but we have our exaltation lord Mars doing really good right now. And so we could also be leaning into that it's not just 11th house matters, but also really 11th house matters. Go into a competitive group situation, go into a deep research group, get with people who are super focused on what you're focused with. And I think a lot of vitality we can gain from our exaltation lords if you sort of engage in that relationship. But I just know that there is a level of kind of, you know, Saturn might not be doing great, but Mars can sort of at least modulate a little bit of what it can modulate. So I think for some of us, especially with retro Saturn, we're probably not going to be the ones who run our mouths. I think we will be able to be a little more reserved. And maybe knowing that you can also give a little more patience to others, and maybe that's also Venus going through the 10th of like giving patience to other people who are struggling with their Mercury Mars situation. Because I don't think we're gonna struggle as hard with all that.
absolutely wonderful points. And I think the last thing I'll say for you, Capricorn Rising, is we talked earlier in the video about the outer planet Pluto stationing to go direct. Now, of course, this is going to be over a bigger picture over decades, and
Mhm.
it's going to be in your whole sign second house for a very, very long time. But if you've got any personal planet connections, it might be more apparent. But as that Pluto stations to go direct, just watch out for themes around finances, things of that nature, because that might pop its head around at this time, but it might not. It might wait, depending on what else is going
Mhm.
on in
Mhm.
your chart.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Okay, into our Aquarius rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so Aquarius rising friends, well, I think also kind of busy month for you all. I think y- I might feel like the most compassion for you guys this month. A lot of the fixed square stuff is like, oof, ouch, if. You have Pluto going direct, you have Mercury squaring Pluto, you have the Sun squaring Pluto. Um, and that looks rough. That looks rough. But with Pluto being retrograde for a while at this point, I'm sure the direct motion will feel somewhat of a movement, at least. Sometimes, and not for everyone, but your Saturn is also retrograde here. So your domicile lord is retrograde, and I think there will be at least this feeling of things are starting to get moving. Even if Saturn isn't direct, having that Pluto direct kind of gives the impression that whatever was stagnant might actually start moving forward now. But with that said, it's going to move forward with a lot of squares, and so right now, wherever your ascendant is, if your ascendant is in earlier degrees or later, you are also going to get all the trines from the ninth house, culminating with Venus trine your ascendant. So ninth house activities is where the relief is going to come from, as opposed to that 10th house pain um, you might be feeling.
Brilliant point, Stevie. And I was thinking the exact same thing that nine house activities would be a great outlet for you, Aquarius Rising, especially as that Venus comes into a domicile in the ninth, and eventually, depending what ascendant degree you are, it's going to touch upon that. So this could mean many different things. His life is getting a bit irritating or cumbersome. This may be a great time for a long distance pleasure trip, things of that nature. Or if you don't want to go too far, pleasure trip of the mind, whether it's higher education, learning, philosophy, all these highlights of the ninth, I think, as Stevie is saying, has the air quality, that ability to be, especially Mercury is going to be there for a little bit longer, but the ability to have this airy objectiveness to what's going on in life. And I think that's what helps Aquarians risings out is that air element of even if there's turbulent times in life, the ability maybe to pull out and be a bit more objective versus
Mhm.
many other rising signs. Because, of course, as Stevie is saying, you've got your chart ruler retrograde again, back into the whole sign, second house. So you might be treading back over old themes to do with finances. We've got a lot of activities with the nodes, North Node in the second, South Node in the eighth. We've got Venus going through there as well. So there might be a lot coming up in terms of
Mhm.
the financial picture, whether that's your own resources or those of shared resources. Neptune is going to dip its toes back into there. So we're not quite finished with that financial picture, whatever that might be in your personal circumstances. And of course, you look at your own natal chart for more information. But yeah, I like that ninth house outlet. I think that Mars, although strong, might be a little bit tricky because, of course, it
Mhm.
squares the first house whole
Mhm.
sign and it's angular. Anytime a planet is angular by transit or otherwise, it's usually quite loud. So it can manifest in many different ways, but I would certainly avoid getting into conflicts with superiors, things of that nature. There may be something that comes up, maybe some sort of conflict, some
Mhm.
public appearance, things of this. Anything that's we've got a lot of these personal planets above the horizon, so it's not a time where you're able to shriek away and hide because it's going to be highlighted above the horizon. So just watch out for that, and especially whatever ascendant degree you have, just watch out for that Mars as it squares up. But other than that, I really agree with you, Stevie. Like, just tap into that ninth house stuff, and that should be really enjoyable for
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Perfect. Okay, last but certainly not least, into
Mhm.
our Pisces rising friends. Stevie, your thoughts?
Yeah, Pisces rising friends. Probably some of the folks recovering from the eclipse last month. But yeah, you guys have seen Saturn come back, and now you're gonna see Neptune come back to your angular first. So it's again just this final pass. Again, some of the people the most experiencing two steps forward, one step back. I don't know what step back you're taking, but you will go forward again. Let's just say you will go forward again. Okay, I promise. But yeah, it could feel really exhausting right now. It could feel really confusing to you with Neptune in the mix too. So I just want to give you guys grace, and you have an exalted Jupiter in the fifth, so I think a lot of for you is just like really making sure that you give yourself the time to do the fifth house things, because that's where a lot of the balm is for you. That's where a lot of the mitigation is for you. So I hope you guys are doing fifth house things.
Wonderful point, Stevie, and tapping into the positives for a while now. Of course, you Pisces Rising have had this wonderfully exalted Jupiter in the fifth house. So let us know in the comments if you've been enjoying creative pursuits. I think that Mars is going to help somewhat. Yes, it's in a cadent house, but it has strength and it makes a nice ease connection to your ascendant, whatever ascendant degree that is. And
Mhm.
that might offset some of the annoyance of having
Mhm.
that bloody Saturn back into your whole
Mhm.
sign first house along with Neptune coming back, especially if you've got late degrees of Pisces rising. That might be a little bit irritating to say hello to those planets again. But as
Mhm.
Stevie is saying, it might be feeling taking a step back or revisiting those themes, but eventually, that will move on out of there for a very, very long time. And hopefully, any of those themes are wrapped up after that. I think another nice outlet might be for only a short period of time when we're recording this, but that Venus will spend the rest, the half of the degrees or a bit less in the whole sign seventh house.
Mhm.
So maybe this is a time when you go out with a partner. Mercury's ruling that seventh house, so maybe it's more intimate to a certain degree, especially as we get Mercury into fixed water. And really, the sun highlighting here, Mercury for a time, we're highlighting the whole sign eighth house. We've had that, maybe the first, what would you call it? The first whistle of that Saturn and Neptune when it was in Aries. Maybe the financial picture is giving you something to look at. But of course, they're not going to be coming back for a while. So I'm just saying, not just for this month, but for the next couple of months where the planets start coming back into the financial picture, that's maybe something you want to prepare and think about if you've
Mhm.
got if you're thinking about financial resources, things of
Mhm.
that nature. But of course, look at your own natal chart for more information. But yeah, I think for you Pisces Rising, it's more of a mixed bag this month. There's some
Mhm.
positives to hang on to, and there are some challenges that you might have to keep an eye on for this month.
Mhm. Yep, that's well said. Definitely.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, Stevie, I absolutely love these conversations. I said in the recording, like you're just wonderfully calming, and I really, really enjoy hearing your insights and your wisdom. And so, thank you so much for going through the month of October with us. Now, what's coming up for you? Is there any classes you'll be teaching at Kepler? Is there anything? What's going on for you?
Thanks, Kyle. Right now, I only know about a class I'm doing in the winter, nothing in fall. So I'll be in winter with Enid with delineation synthesis. So if you are in between your fundamentals or have finished your fundamentals, but you just want a place to practice, we do a lot of labs in class and then a weekly lab as well. And we do just the fundamentals, and we also do a lot of artistic stuff. Oh, I think we wanted to circle back to Misty's artwork situation here, but that sort of reminded me. We do a lot of artwork. We delineate pieces of art. We do like collage boards for placements. You can choose music playlists for placements. So we do a lot of um, where low what I like to call low stakes astrology. It's like you don't need to predict if someone's gonna have a child or not at this point. What is their spice tolerance? What music do they like? What which this artist, what of their artworks is seen in their placement. So we do a lot of fun delineations in that one.
That's wonderful, and you're such a great teacher, along with Enid, and that's a great class. And that's really delineation synthesis. It's kind of like if you know the basics, you know your planets, your houses, your aspects. This is really if you're getting to the point where you're struggling to synthesize all the information,
Mhm.
this is a wonderful place with a great teacher like Stevie and Enid to pull the pieces together. And as Stevie says, it's not high stakes. Astrology, just getting you. That's probably one of the hardest parts of astrology. Is like you can know the bits and pieces but synthesizing the information is one of the hardest parts of learning astrology. So we'll certainly leave information links in the description and comment boxes. And yes, thank you, Stevie. I wanted to give a shout out to Mary, who puts all of these wonderful artworks for all of our forecasts every month. And I believe she based it on Stevie. No, you know more than me than the artist.
Oh, I don't know the artist, but I know it looks like it was from Yellow Submarine from the
That's
Beatles.
right.
Yes, very psychedelic. which is great because I had my psychedelic shirt on today, so it matched the artwork.
I
But
love that shirt and I love the colors it
it's really
matches.
fun. But this is a great overview picture for the month as well because it's so kind of is so fast moving. Even though we see a lot of fixed water, there's just so much happening and different colors and envisionings. And I like that this guy is like stretched out because I feel like we're all kind of stretched out right now and we're just like, what? In mid leap. So yeah, great picture, Mary.
Absolutely wonderful. And lastly, Stevie, where are you on social media? Can people follow you and find you and things like that?
Yeah, think my tags are usually underneath. I'm on Instagram, so follow me there, though I'm rarely posting, but you can see classes that I'm giving or when my zine comes out and things like that. Mhm.
Fantastic. And I'll leave everybody watching the links in the description and comments box below. So, Stevie, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. And really, really enjoy our conversations through
Yeah, thank
these
you, Kyle.
podcasts. Wonderful. And see you all next time. All have a wonderful rest of your month, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye bye.